Hey Mark. I mean Matt. Or Marty.
That's my name, don't wear it out.
I got a surprise for you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I do.
Well, that's cool, baby.
It's a beautiful body of water. A river, as the pros say. You might already be familiar.
Sandy!
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
I was hoping you might tie some flies, and throw them into my water. If you know what I mean.
Come on, Sandy, don't make me laugh. Ha, 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 ha.
There's a chance that you'll catch a fish if you do. Get it? Winky face emoji.
Whoa.
I'm trying to tell you that I need you. That you are the only one for me. What's the matter with you? Are you an idiot?
What's the matter with me, baby? What's the matter with you?
Nothing is the matter with me. You're the one talking to a river right now. Do you even know your own name?
Well, I do not know. I mean, maybe there's two of us, right?
I think you might be lost. In more ways than one.
Why don't you take out a missing persons ad? Try the yellow pages, I don't know.
Hey, maybe I will.
I mean, you know how it is, rockin' and rollin' and whatnot.
No, I guess I don't know how it is. Because you aren't even making sense anymore. Can you just start the Secret Society of Flight Tires podcast now, for the love of God?
Hey, you freaks.
How dare you?
I mean, friends. Welcome back. I have another episode of Secret Society of Fly Tires for you. Yeah, you're my friends now, whether you like it or not. Just like my guests for today's show, Charlie and Roxy Allen from Axiomatic Fly Fishing. They invited me to come fishing, and now they're stuck with me. I'm the only one that makes the rules here, okay? You nice people listening are whatever I imagine you to be, and at least for right now, you're my friends. I'm gonna move on from that idea before things get weird and uncomfortable, because that is way too much power and control for one person to have over such a gigantic group of people like my listener base, and I tend to imagine some pretty weird things.
Yes. It would probably be a good idea to stop now before things get too weird, Matty boy, my true love.
If for some crazy reason you've been listening since the first episode, congratulations and thanks. You could probably find better ways to use your time, but we're 18 shows deep, so there's no turning back. You should feel proud of the little podcast host that you've nurtured. I'm basically a professional broadcaster now. I'm less like the beekeeper radio kid from Wet Hot American Summer, and way more like Larry King with every hour of nonsense that I release.
Someone in Germany stole 5 metric tons of Nutella. Police haven't arrested anyone yet, but they are questioning Gunther Hogsbargen, the 700-pound man that smells like chocolate and hazelnuts, who guards the Nutella storage facility. That's funny.
I told myself I needed to have 6 episodes in the can before I started releasing Season 2, and it feels good to say that I've made it to that point. It's the little victories. This feels like the rare time I remember to successfully close a door or securely close the lid of any container, which my wife likes to point out is impossible for me to do. I closed it this time, the lid on my weird little fly tying program. Or maybe like my family pasta sauce, I shouldn't close the lid all the way on this show ever.
Mamma mia.
Hey, how you all doing, huh? Mamma mia. And the Italian-American slang word of the day is mamma mia. Mamma mia.
It clears a path in my brain in the same way that my dad would tell me to do with the mess on my childhood bedroom floor before I went to bed. My room was typically messy enough that my dad would worry that if the house caught on fire, there would be no available escape route. What I'm saying is my brain is usually on fire, and this podcast is my escape route. Safety first.
Safety should always come first, and second, and third.
I work better under pressure anyway, and once I started releasing these new episodes, it started the clock for me to record 4 to 6 more episodes and round out the rest of the season. Not having a concrete deadline leads to delays every time, and that comes from the mouth of a fool who has spent half of his life as a project manager. Me.
It's me!
I know it to be true. Of course, I'm talking about my day jobs before this professional broadcasting career took over. Speaking of jobs, I'd like to pose a question to my listeners. Would you trade going to work for eating a handful of worms every day? It sounds like a sweet deal to me no matter what your job is.
I got worms.
I'll try to remember to post that as a poll on Instagram or something so you can really vote. I figure that we're all anglers, right gang? And we've probably touched more night crawlers than most people, so we know what we're getting into.
The same worms that eat me will someday eat you too.
You pull in the same salary and benefits that you have now, except the only difference is you eat a handful of worms at the time you would normally start your workday, and then you get to do whatever you want.
Why are you at work? You could be out in the woods tripping on mushrooms.
I'm gonna guess that the results of my poll would come back as 100% of responders said they would eat the worms, but I'm eager to see. These are the kinds of childish questions that get batted around in various text threads with my brothers and friends, and used to be asked at the office when I had to go into work every day. I actually kind of miss going into the office on occasion now that I work remotely full-time as a podcaster. I don't get to walk around with my stupid friends pointing out places where I would sleep if I was homeless, which is a weird habit to bring up unless all of your friends are as stupid as you are. I can't help that one for some reason. It feels good though, like some kind of weird box to check off on a preparation list. It makes me feel like I've got real street smarts. I started taking that a little further and changed it into looking for spots I felt would be the best suited for my dead body to be found while out on my walks. Is that weird? I'm telling you it felt good at the time, but it also made me realize I probably needed some help with my brain, which I'm getting now, thank you very much. I keep telling you that this podcast helps too, so you should feel good about helping. I'd rather tell you guys this crap instead of some poor therapist being paid hourly to sit on Zoom with sad people all day. If I'm gonna Zoom, I'd rather do it with folks like Charlie and Roxy Allen and talk about tying flies in the Sandy River up in Oregon. A married couple that can happily exist together with clients on a drift boat seems like a pretty special thing.
Marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today.
I'm enjoying this season 2 trend of having more than one person on the other end of the interview. I had 2 hermit boys on an episode, 2 honey hole guys on another, and now Charlie and Roxy. The angling married couple joined me to talk about a cool steelhead river in Oregon called the Sandy, and I suppose I should actually talk about it a little before I get to that interview. The first weird fact that I learned while researching the Sandy River was that it got its name because in ancient times the river didn't actually hold any water, just hot flowing sand like lava. That is so stupid, and I really shouldn't start off the educational part of the program with a lie that barely took any effort. My joke isn't that far off though. Reading through an article by John Harrison on OregonEncyclopedia.org, which sounds like one of my fake sources but is actually a real website, I learned that in 1805, William Clark dubbed the 55-mile-long Sandy River the Quicksand River after attempting to cross the shallows at its mouth and getting stuck. I arrived at the entrance of a river which appeared to scatter over a sandbar, Clark wrote in his journal for November 3rd, 1805, the bottom of which I could see quite across and did not appear to be 4 inches deep in any part. He attempted to wade the stream, but to my astonishment, found the bottom a quicksand and impassable. He called to the canoes and hitched a ride. Then, after a meal of goose and venison, he and Meriwether Lewis walked up the river about 1.5 miles. Clark described it as a, quote, very considerable stream, using 2 R's in the word very for some reason, with 2 channels and 2 mouths, forming an island about 3 miles in length. The first time the river appeared on a map was on one prepared by the expedition. I'd like to give these adventurers some extra credit for killing and eating geese during their explorations. The only good goose is a dead goose. Anyways, the Sandy River begins at Reed Glacier on the southwest slope of secret UFO base and active volcano Mount Hood, which is the most prominent peak in Oregon's Cascade Mountains, and flows generally west and north to its confluence with the mighty Columbia, just east of Troutdale. I only half kid about it being a UFO base. I'll link to a video in the show notes, but I'm not going to let that distract me from continuing with the facts about the Sandy.
There is something truly magnetic about this mountain that is bringing people to come and watch it. There is so much UFO activity. There are so many unidentified lights, unidentified objects that are seen around that mountain.
After many years of anadromous fish enjoying their natural spawning grounds, the 47-foot-tall, 345-foot-long Marmot Dam was constructed and became operational on April 30th, 1913. It prevented salmon, steelhead, and trout from migrating to some 280 miles of their previous habitat.
How are you? I am under the water. Please help me.
Years later, the potential cost of retrofitting the dam for fish passage plus enhancement measures that would be required by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission as part of a revised operating license was too high, and it was decided that dam removal was cheaper and better for the fish. Contractors finished the demolition of Marmot Dam on September 20th of 2007. It was the biggest dam removal in Oregon to date and the tallest dam removed in the Northwest in 40 years, according to PG&E. The Little Sandy River Diversion Dam was removed the next summer. Removing the dams allowed the Sandy and Little Sandy to run free for the first time in 96 years. Surprise, 10 years of free-flowing river has been good for the fish, the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife reported in 2017. The Sandy has seen increasingly strong returns of spring Chinook, in some cases double what they were a decade before the Marmot Dam was removed. Today, approximately 25 miles of the Sandy is designated wild, scenic, or recreational. A total of 12.5 miles of the river between Dodge Park and Dabney State Park have been designated an Oregon State Scenic Waterway and a federal wild and scenic river. The Sandy River flows through a rugged canyon with deep, clear pools and clean gray gravel bars that are often in the shade of tall trees. As the river leaves the steep slope of the mountain, it crosses recent volcanic mud flows and the gradient decreases. The mellowing currents allow smaller gravel to collect. These deposits form an ever-shifting layer lying loosely over a mantle of hard basalt. Much of the water in the river travels through this aquifer, providing maximum oxygenation for the spawn of anadromous fish. The Sandy River Basin contains vast areas of spawning gravel for salmon and steelhead and a bunch of other fish, too. The internet tells me that the Sandy contains populations of at least 8 runs of anadromous fish species, wild and hatchery stock, and has up to 10 resident species: steelhead, chinook, coho, brook trout, rainbow, bull trout, white suckers, large-scale suckers, white sturgeon, shad, octopus, manta ray, and more. Is there some kind of slam award for catching all these different fish in a day? The Sandy Slam? I just made it up, and you get a special prize for achieving it that I haven't figured out yet. Some flies you may want to tie to help you achieve the now infamous Sandy Slam include your classic muddler minnows, some golden stones, you'll want to bring some caddis and lots of different variations or stages, some pheasant tails, and whatever else you feel confident in. I tell you every goddamn time that I like a leech. Every gosh darn time. Every gosh darn time. Every god dang time that I like a leech.
Ah, the leech.
In mathematics or logic, an axiom is an unprovable rule or first principle accepted as true because it is self-evident or particularly useful. Nothing can both be and not be at the same time and in the same respect is an example of an axiom. How does that apply to fly fishing with Charlie and Roxy and their guide business dubbed Axiomatic Fly Fishing? I forgot to ask them, okay? So I don't really know. But I'll find out one of these days. Here's the chat we had until their sweet pooch got hangry enough to tell us to cut it and feed him his supper. Charlie and Roxy, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. You're a husband and wife fly tying and fishing and guiding duo at Axiomatic Fly Fishing, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you'll forever hold the status as the first married couple that I've had the pleasure of interviewing here.
Brad.
Right on.
Maybe I'll make you an actual trophy. Send it up there. I'm excited to get to know you guys more and talk about rad steelhead and salmon river in the Pacific Northwest, the Sandy.
Yeah,
it's why you're here.
Yep.
Have you prepared yourself for this interview?
No.
Did you arrive having eaten?
No, actually, I was at some point while we were actually doing this interview, I was gonna Grubhub and half hour mark.
Yeah, good idea.
He's got the DoorDash launched.
Yeah,
nice. Blew me in. Tell me what you're getting when it comes around.
Yeah.
Do you know what Cafe Yum is?
Cafe Yum? No, I don't think so.
Oh well, you're gonna have to try Cafe Yum when you come up.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's really easy to explain it. I guess it's typically just like a rice bowl with some olives and some tomato and avocado,
and
whatever kind of protein you want to put on it. And then, but what makes it the Yum Bowl is that they put this stuff called Yum sauce, which is kind of their thing.
Okay.
And that Yum sauce is fucking tasty.
Hell yeah! Well, I want to go to Cafe Yum. You hear that? I hope they hear the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that we're already talking about food I mean, that's kind of what happens when I talk to most people. It hasn't happened a whole lot on the show yet, but I like it.
We like food.
Real quick, would you guys mind giving the folks who are listening a little bit of info on where you're located and what rivers that you guys fish?
Yeah, we're actually located in Salem, Oregon, which is kind of in between everything that I like to fish anyway. So it's a really inconvenient place and a really convenient place when it comes to having those options. So we are like exactly 1 hour in between Portland and Eugene. So we're basically 1 hour in between the Clackamas and Sandy rivers and the McKenzie and the Middle Fork.
Okay.
And then we have the Santiam River that runs, kind of basically through Salem. And
I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, I honestly don't fish it much myself. So yeah, I won't even speak on it much because I just haven't put enough time in it that I even take clients out to that river.
Sure.
And I just started exploring the Malala River, which is also it's a pretty convenient, easy river for us to get to here as well.
Cool.
But it's a fishery that hasn't typically done too hot in the last few years, and so kind of stayed away from it. But gonna try anyway, giving it a valid effort.
Nice. Another one in the bag of tricks that you.
Yeah, kind of everything I possibly can. Especially because people call we get emails or phone calls, and people will be like, "Hey, we're staying in Silverton, and I have a wedding, but we want to try to fit in like some fishing before." And I'm going, well, where you're located is not, like near anything that either I know well enough to have you pay me to go fish it, or the time frame they have or whatever. But so yeah, trying to like kind of myself, I've really got to start digging into those rivers and lakes and figuring out all of them.
This is part of guiding I think people don't really get is that you'll get calls like that aren't even like, maybe something that you advertise on your site or something. They're just looking for help.
I get almost nobody who like even pay attention to what I said. Like really, it'll be like, "Hey, I'm here," and usually I want to like have people aboard and kind of be taking those people on, but I also will typically send them off to someone who can suit them better.
Yeah,
like if you're staying in Bend, there's guides out in Bend who like know those things really well, and I don't want to just take their money. I want them to be stoked, and so.
Sure. Right on.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to just come like party, if I could be a party liaison, there's one thing the thing that's occurred that I've noticed since starting this actually is there have been a lot of people who told me to be like aware of what I'm posting on social media, and now you have to be really careful, and the other guides are out to attack you.
They're watching.
Yeah. And then it turns out like that is true, but typically from the very people who are saying those very things. And I'm like, oh yeah, fuck you. And then I started thinking, I was like, you know what? My whole life, like I've chosen to kind of go left when I was told to go right. And so I'm just like, let's just keep doing what we're doing. And like, if we're going to, brand ourselves kind of like the weirdos that do it different, that's great. If you want like that formula, that thing that works, that's gonna win you the gold every time, then there are people who are gonna get you out there and do that. But
yeah, well, look out because I'm watching you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I hope you're having fun doing it.
Well, how did you two meet?
We met on Instagram actually.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I only just started fishing when I met Charlie. I had never been on a drift boat, never held a fly rod, but we got into it really fast. I think our third date, it was like a camping trip and we fished for 2 days.
Yeah. Yeah. Our third date was just.
That's a good test.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a prereq, but it's nice. It's really nice actually. So what's cooler than kind of going out with the person you want to go out with anyway and go fish. So.
Yeah. How do you guys manage that relationship though while working together for the guide service?
Well, we both also, I mean, like I still have a day job, she still has a day job. When we guide together, we literally guide together. she's on the boat, and if we're gonna speak about it, like honestly, she's really an apprentice at this point. She's still learning. She comes along, but it's really nice, like when new flies need to be tied on or things need to be rigged up or helping prepare the meals for the trips or whatever. I mean, she's involved in all of it.
There's a lot. There's a lot to do.
But yeah, I mean, she's learning just the same, and that's how it buffs up. But it's really nice. Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm primarily a photographer, so we have like a photo package option too, and I come and I bring
that's cool
cameras, and they have an option for photography, which is a really fun thing to offer that I don't think a lot of guides probably really offer.
Not like
professional
at that,
photography.
not at that level. Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, I mean, you go to those trips hoping to come home with a good photo. You know, I mean, that's part of it for sure. And
I mean, you're gonna go home with like rad photos, anyways, which is kind of nice. You know, it's but I mean, most people usually leave with fish on my trips, especially in the summer. Like this winter steelhead is a whole different thing. And I hope most people hopefully come into it aware of what they're getting into. And like, there's never a guarantee with fish, but there's definitely not a guarantee with winter steelhead. So
yeah. Would you say that people that book those winter trips like that kind of usually do? I mean, I don't know if you're booking and paying money to fish with somebody in February, not knowing that you're going to kind of, I mean, you know, you're going to deal with weather and all that kind of stuff.
I think that's why you are paying somebody is because you're already dealing with a fish that's very difficult, elusive. So if you're going to get out in the cold and give it an effort, then you want your best chances. And absolutely, like that's I have hired guides in my life to go fish new rivers because I'm like, I want to know what the tactics are, step into it and like have a chance. And then usually if I plan on being like, I've gone up to Idaho, I was like, I'm going to be there for a week, but I only paid for 1 day of guiding. I took my own boat. And then the very next day I went and launched the same launch. And I was like, okay, here's kind of what we did. And even still with the guide, I had much more success because throughout the day, the guide was already aware of what those hatches were going to be like at 10:01. Like the hatch changes, and sure as shit it did. And I was like, I can't remember everything about what was occurring. So that guide's experience is like, that's how you
got to look at every guide trip as a huge like on the water class, really, like every time.
You're going to learn something. At least if they're a good guide. That's also the thing. If you're getting skunked and things are going to shit, your job really is to just like be educating them on something. Be like, hey, I've noticed this with your cast, even if they're not in a casting lesson. Hey, let's work on this. In my summer jam, when it's primarily trout, I'll be like, hey, have you ever cast a spay rod? And I try to get everybody like on. So I have trout spays. And I'm like, let's swing flies for trout. Especially if the numbers are really good, which they usually are. And because I guide the Mackenzie, really, like primarily the Mackenzie in the summer. And I know how to fish that river really well. And so it's like, you swing flies and you're still going to catch fish. And then they're also learning how to do something. So their takeaway is much more than just the fish. It's like learned how to tie different kinds of knots, how to cast different, how to
reading water, everything.
And, anything.
It's funny too. You mentioned teaching somebody to cast a spay rod for the first time and stuff. I feel like every time I fish with people that don't fish a two-handed rod, and they're fly fishing with me, like they always want to try it, right? And like, as soon as they get a nice roll cast out, they're like, "Oh, this is rad!" You know, they get right into it real quick.
That's if anybody who's ever seen a spay cast should want to do it.
Especially if you're already fly fishing.
I remember I was actually on the Clackamas the first time I ever saw it, and I was still casting a single hand rod, and I was very new to fly fishing, and I was just trying to like copy what the guy was doing, but I had no idea like that it was a whole different rod and that the line setup was different, and I was just like, well, fuck, you know.
I've said it on my show before, but it is just like it was kind of intimidating to even try because it seems like you're getting into something completely different. And I had just gotten comfortable with like standard single hand fly fishing when I decided to kind of jump into that. And thankfully I like it. So I like it a lot, you know? And so I just kind of dove in head first with that. And that's what I like to do the most. So, hey, I was going to ask you guys, have you ever gotten into like a fight on board, like with a guest? like
No.
on the boat? No,
We don't fight even,
No.
without guests or at home. Really,
I'm really not a good
we got lucky.
fighter.
I'm not a good
Before
fighter.
I fight, I like turn off. I like you're the same. If we butt heads, he wants to go to sleep. He's like, I just got really tired. And then I'll go and I do the same. I kind of like pull up and I need like time.
Yeah.
So we don't have those.
They usually say you don't want to go to bed mad, but that sounds like a productive way to go to bed mad though,
Yeah, but I mean, the real answer is no. So no, that would never occur because we definitely, as much as I don't want to do what everybody else is doing and all the grief I've been given about like, how we present ourselves or whatever. I'm still not.
Get grief. I didn't know that. I didn't know this at all. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Oh yeah.
It's been
a little bit of a thing. I think we've cleaned it up a little bit. We did get a little wild on the Instagram.
Oh, really?
For a bit. Now we have a private, like a close friends story jam going on now if we're gonna post wild stuff. But there was some butt cheeks. There were some,
I'm offended. I'm offended.
It was so way early on that
hearing the story.
It's not even this time now.
Well, yeah. But also, Axiomatic was barely getting started, like at that time. So we were still goofing off, like being ourselves. And
how dare you?
I still want it to be us. I hope we project that we're fun and easy and mildly offensive to some. Maybe I hope people get that.
I hope the same thing.
But yeah, if there's any frustration, it's always, I think we get each other on. Not that we don't get frustrated, because every friend, every person that has to interact with each other can get frustrated every once in a while, but it's always like just a moment of, okay, like one of us just agrees.
Yeah, I got to ask, because I mean, I worked with my wife long ago, like early on in our relationship. It was one of our first jobs too. I mean, at least one of my first jobs. And I got fired. It was the only time that I've ever gotten fired from a job. And she was like a manager there. It like had escalated. She promoted to manager. She didn't fire me. She didn't have to fire me. But it was a sales gig, and I'm not a salesman. Like, I don't like, if you say no thanks, I'm like, all right, good, next, and and I didn't get, so my sales were low, right? It was a telesales gig, and I got let go, and she kept the gig, and it was kind of weird, I guess, for a minute. I was like, what the fuck? Like, they let me go, you gotta leave with me too, like, what's
and you're oh, that's so funny. And she's a manager. That's a good story. No, I think it's different if you're doing something that you're passionate about, that is a game to you. It's also it's not just work, it's super fun, right? So we're out there, and yes, though it is like taxing mentally sometimes, or physically if you're out on a long day, but it's still amazing. It's the best job ever. So
I think something that people don't really recognize too, and I've talked to other guides about this, is the stress that comes along with it. There's a stress there to produce fish for clients, weather impacting your stuff. I mean, there's all sorts of different things that you kind of don't have control over that could really like wreck you for a while, or guides having a hard time fishing the salmon runs here in Northern California that have just been decimated, and like you used to be making a living on them guiding it, in salmon season, and not being able to do that anymore, and having to find somewhere else, another watershed or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, not just physical and mental and it's everything, right? Spiritual.
That's just why you gotta good guides, anyways, I believe, just like can they see what's occurring, and you just start changing up your program. Like, in the middle of the thing, if you see frustration occurring, stop and like take a lunch, pull over and be like, hey, we're going to take a little break here. Give everyone you just kind of have to be like, this is happening. Hey, the fish aren't hot right now. So how am I going to redeem like this trip and make it feel good for them? And for starters, if you're just being out on the boat, I think for people is typically like a good day. Like they're doing something and that's fun, and they're seeing a new river. But if you're giving them some just like a tour of the river, talking about the geology or
bird watching, all the stuff.
Yeah, it could be anything. In the spring, we start we'll get off the boat and go pick mushrooms.
I was gonna ask you about that. Yeah, is that kind of like a little side quest that you can get into on some of these guide trips, or?
Yeah, I mean, because morels start popping up in the spring, and
I saw you guys holding a handful of them on one of your videos.
Yeah, there's we just have a tendency to do that, and they'll be when they're coming up. That happens, and then September and fall, you can get after chanterelles, and we just kind of get going. If that's part of the thing, then we do that thing as well.
Or it looked like you might have been morels that you guys had. You guys get those?
We did.
I was,
yeah.
Yep. Never tried them. Really want to try those.
Yeah, I mean, there's chicken in the woods. We have, you can find there's tons of edible mushrooms. Pop off and kind of do that thing. If I have an idea where a few of those good spots are.
I like that stuff. I like the extra stuff that comes along on a fishing trip.
Yeah, so do I.
I like all the other stuff too,
And that was, like I said, in my 2 experiences on guided trips, that's also what made it really great. Is Leanne Young, I can't remember the outfit she guides for, but she always stopped, and there's a pear tree, lone pear tree that you have to kind of go hike to, and she makes that part of her gig. And so I was like, oh, that's neat. And then just along the way, she's like, watch out for this wildlife and blah blah. So you feel like you're getting away with something. I don't know. It just kind of makes it neat. So
totally. How did you guys make the jump from just fishing though to having a guide service and taking that leap?
I basically had been doing it at some capacity for years, and then I have a friend of mine who is a guide who is like, hey, you know how to row a boat, and you know how to fish, and you know how to talk to people. You can be a guide. And because we were having a conversation, I was like, I always was kind of curious about it, and just found it to be impossible. It's a world you can't enter. And it turns out that's not really the case at all.
It does have that. It does have that air to it. It seems kind of like an exclusive club a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it does, and whatever you're going to have to go through to make it happen with the state or whatever. Whenever I get kind of dealing with that, I'm like, oh, that's going to be paperwork and dealing with things, and it was
my fictitious business name.
Yeah, I mean it wasn't a heap of pile of work. So I'm sorry, what did you say?
I was just talking about I made a bad joke about setting up a fictitious business.
Those things are super funny. I can't even remember what mine is.
Making me repeat my joke. That's what I do. That was an old conference call trick we would do at work when somebody said a bad joke. Be like, what was that? And get him to say it one more time for everybody to hear it.
That's the worst.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's cool. I mean, it does seem scary. I love fishing, and it's never crossed my mind. For one, I don't get into a lot of fish. That's just the fact. But it seems I've been out with enough guides now that I know it's tough. I mean, I went out on a guide trip one time where I knew I've been lucky, like you said, having guides that, guided you to the pear tree or whatever, that did the same kind of stuff with me for the most part. Every once in a while, if you don't get the right recommendation or whatever, end up with somebody that doesn't work with you, right? Doesn't work well with you. And you kind of get the gist right off the bat. One time I went with a guide and he was cursing somebody low holing him as soon as he pulled out of the boat launch. You know what I mean? Somebody who would legitimately beat him there. I'm like, this isn't gonna be good, we caught fish and stuff, but it wasn't the same. Catching fish is not the whole thing. I caught my first legitimate steelhead that day, and it still wasn't. It's not like a cool fish in my book because that day wasn't great because the guide wasn't the best.
Yeah,
they can definitely kind of ruin it right away too. That bad energy weirdness. There's tons of it that goes into that thing. Guides are expensive. The whole sport. Most really neat, cool things are. But I always want to tell people, this is actually why I recommend everybody that I can. The people I've had on my boat who want to learn how to spay cast, for example, I'll send them tons of links to YouTube before, hey, we have a trip coming up in 2 weeks. Watch 100 of these things. or I'll give them channels. I'm like, go check out this channel or this channel or this channel, and then go through those spay casting lessons that they have. And the reason why is because then they have the experience of like 4 or 5 or 6 different people with different analogies, a different way of speaking to them.
That matters a
like,
lot.
That's gonna be
matters, yeah.
Yeah. And then at the very least, like they're learning terminology. They have some grasp of like kind of what to do. They've done a little bit of homework, but also what's important is I can ask, like, what was your favorite video? And then they're like, okay, so they really keyed into that. I'm like, not like I'm trying to copy people, but then I'll be like, okay, I better go watch that video too.
Yeah.
And
they get some general terminology they might have not known yet. So you can kind of speak the same language right out the gate.
Yeah. But yeah, whoever they kind of like favored, I'm like, I'm going to try to do that the best I can.
Yeah. Or somebody might use like a 3-word combination that's different than what he said that actually clicks for them.
Yeah. There's everyone's had that experience, right? I know that in snowboarding early on, like I struggled and struggled and struggled. I had this gentleman, Ben Bevan, who was talking about my side edges and, like how was basically giving me the anatomy of the snowboard and how it's set up. And once I understood like the mechanics of the snowboard, I was like, oh my God, it all comes together like a lot better for me. And I've discovered that for me, how I learn best is if you're trying to teach me anything, like if I know how the motor works,
you need to know the whole thing
really well. Like the reason why I get to this point is because it starts here.
Yeah, the why. So, I'm like that with like knot tying videos. Like they can be the same knot, and I can watch 5 of them before I finally get it. Before it's like, okay, that's the one that works.
For me, it would be like, why did this knot need to make sense? Like, where did it come from?
Like that.
And then I'm like, oh, okay, now I can put that knot together, because if you know it's for me, if I know its roots, I'm just like, aha. But
that's cool. So since we're talking about knots, when did you guys start tying flies?
Roxy just started. Roxy's fresh to this.
Me too.
In a lot of ways, but but she still like right away. Really,
we went full speed with all of it. I was learning so much so fast, and in some ways I feel like it was too much at once because it felt overwhelming, and I think I finally had to. I'm prioritizing now. Like I really want to perfect my cast. I want it to be wonderful, and I don't have space for learning more than that right now. I'm like, okay, I have like bits of this and bits of that, and I watch fly tying videos, but I've actually taken a break from forcing myself to sit at the vise and put things together because I was getting frustrated. And when I get frustrated, I want to give up. So I'm like, okay, let's just table that for a few more weeks.
Yeah.
Well,
no, I was just going to tell you guys too. It's funny you mentioned that you kind of get overwhelmed. I mean, fly fishing is its own rabbit hole, and fly tying is a whole nother thing. It's all intertwined and worked in there too. But it's like its own corner of that, right? And I feel like you have to end up cracking all that stuff like once you get obsessed, right? And then like figuring out, okay, I tried all this stuff, I did this, I did that, and then you're like, now I need to. For me, it was hiring my first guy to give me a casting lesson. You watch all this stuff on YouTube, like you're saying, you're like, think you can do it, and you go to the river and you try it and you do pretty good, but inevitably you can't really evaluate yourself well. You can even watch a video of yourself or whatever and still not know what you're doing wrong necessarily. And for me, it was hiring somebody to do a casting lesson or two, and finding that, and then figuring out, this is what I want to learn next, and jumping around.
Yeah, I think you kind of know there. That's like the logical progression is to get into it, and then like it just is taking on more challenges. And
where did it start for you, Charlie?
Well, I was given a vise, like a cheese dick, I don't know, fucking Cabela's starter kit that came with a few fly tying materials and like a DVD, and it taught you how to tie a woolly bugger and whatever else. And
I was just watching Kelly Gallup dissuade people from buying those packages on YouTube. The other night. It was like a Christmas gifting video or something. He's like, don't get the kit,
Yeah. Well, for anybody, that's like what that's something like your dad would buy for you, because He's like, oh, I know, like, and it's a great deal.
Yeah.
And they're fucking cheap. And it's like, $50 and they can get you everything.
They don't know.
One bag of feathers is $50. I can do the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, like tons of people get those things, and really, I would agree. Like, don't get those things. It's the materials are crap. The device is crap. It's going to just end up frustrating. They're just going to throw it away. And now, now you're out $50 anyways, and they're not even enjoying it. So, and that's basically how it went for me. I remember like sitting down, I tied up a few woolly buggers, and I did catch a fish at Odell Lake on a woolly bugger that I tied.
Nice, yeah.
And I was really excited, but it fell apart really quickly, and like that, that fly was long gone, kind of instantly. And I always just had it in my head. I was like, this is something that old men do. I was like, when I'm like 80, then I'll be sitting down at this bench like all day, fucking doing it.
I hope I am.
And then really what occurred is I did pick it up, and still at a very, very small level. Like, went out and bought a rotary vise, and I was picking it up and dabbling in it a little bit more. And then pandemic, kind of like everybody, I was like, pandemic, well, now I'm fucking inside, and I just went to Thai Town.
Yeah.
And
me too.
That was when then I kind of like discovered, I was like, oh, I also like doing this, and I like being creative. And then I just was like, I just want to create like beautiful flies.
Yeah.
And so my fly tying, I create ones that are effective, but I'll also create these things that are just for me.
Yeah.
Oftentimes. So
that's cool.
But yeah, like that's my jam. I just made people earrings for Christmas.
Oh yeah, that's cool. I just started getting a little interested in those little different applications that you can do, like a brooch, like a corsage type thing.
Yeah.
All those kinds of different decorative things you can do. It's cool. We just mentioned the kits. One of the kind of kit type things, I guess it's not really a kit, but it's like you can order or buy the scraps, like feather scraps, like the trimmings and stuff like that. Like, I think those are worth the gamble. Like, I buy those every once in a while, and you get some good stuff in there. It's kind of fun seeing what you'll get. I don't know.
Honestly, it's just as much a gamble as buying, like, I'm sitting down at the fly tying table. You buy like these mallard feathers.
Yeah.
They're only like 6 feathers out of like 400. And
half of them are garbage. Totally.
Yeah, I'm like, it's a pile of shit.
Yeah.
And I have like hundreds of them, and I've got like, out of $20,000 worth of materials hanging on my walls, probably only like $18 of it can do me any good.
Yeah.
Except for the synthetic stuff, like synthetic fly tying materials. That's great.
Yeah. The way those mallard feathers or flanks or are packaged too is such a pain to sort through, like, and put them all back in that little bag.
It's like someone stabbed your fucking down blanket, and you got that, you fucking asshole. Yeah.
So I take it that tie-in would be something you'd be doing whether you'd be guiding or not, right? I mean, I'm assuming you're tying flies for your trips anyway. And
yeah. I mean, now it turned into like really a necessity at this point, because a lot of them get lost, or I'm discovering like what works well. And so I'll be like, okay, that's it. I can make 100 of those things and like have them ready for like tons of clients. And it's just something to do. And then also, people also really like that. That's just something to be talking about with your clients as well. They're like, oh, you tie your own? And just something else. And then if you seriously, here's how the economics of this very small industry, if you care about it, that also behooves like people down the line, because the fly shops at some point be like, hey, I was out on this guy trip and I got really interested in tying flies, and now you have a customer.
Yeah.
And if everyone just kind of like passes it along, we all worked with each other, that's what makes the most sense, right? Like, you get people who have never ever fly fished before, they become curious in it, and now we all build our market share. I think there's often this idea that like the market is this thing and it's this static environment, and if I take 4 of your people, like, you've lost 4 people. I'm like, how about you just make it really, really exciting so more people want to get involved, and we build the market share, and now it's good for everybody.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I've always just been befuddled by like that premise that like that it's not good to pass it along to somebody else or whatever it might be.
Keeping secrets, man. Yeah, no, I get you.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Sandy. I want to know. So, I mean, we were just talking about you tying up flies for your guide trips. What do you tie when you're taking clients out on the Sandy? Like, what are you tying for them, and what do you think people should? What do you recommend anglers have in their box when they're going to fishing?
Winter's still heading on the Sandy. I just tube flies like all day long, and even though it seems to be there's like this really strange learning curve that occurs with people trying to rig a tube fly.
It's really it's really foreign if for the first time you see it, for sure. Yeah,
it is, but and like that's just one of the things that also like can be really exciting. Literally, someone can take away how to rig a tube fly and be like, I got something out of this whole trip, which is the most bizarre thing ever. But that literally can like save your whole trip. Not catching fish, but being like, thank you so much for teaching me how to tie a hook on. But tube flies, and then like just like weighted tube, either lead eyes or whatever kind of like raw weight you stick in the middle of that thing to just kind of like dig deep and sink tips. It's that's what I go with. And I also really love intruders, but intruders have a tendency, it seems, in most people's hands to just end up on the bottom and snagged up and lost. And so I'd rather just put tube flies on and then just weight that down with a sink tip, and we just kind of get it down where it needs to be. And then there's no color or pattern or anything specifically. It's kind of a weird thing. Like the only steelhead I have ever caught they're always pink. They always have some kind of pink. I'm like a go-to pink.
But he loves flying pink flies, tying pink flies.
Well, I mean, swinging flies isn't really matching the hatch a lot of the time, right? I mean, it's like it's just kind of what you feel confident with. Exactly.
It's really a matter of just if you get it in front of their face, then that's your best bet. Like just no matter what. And so I don't want it to sound like that's entirely it. So like, and people are going like, that guy's an idiot. But I mean, because there are a lot of things at play, right? Like, watercolor and is it a bright day? Is it a dark day? And
will the fish know how much time you put into that fly and be respect you more that day, right? No, it happens.
Spend like no time at all tying your flies. Like I would say I have a swim tank that some people think is a lousy investment. I think it's awesome because when I tie a new pattern, and this is kind of crazy because I basically like freestyle everything I tie. I don't think I've ever, aside from maybe like doing like 3 of the same flies, and then I get bored and then I'm like not a production. There's no assembly line shit going on here. Anyways, like then I have to put those in a swim tank to see how they actually work, because it really sucks to get out there and like discover that you spent some time on this thing that's going to get you really nowhere. But yeah, so that's a worthy investment, or a bathtub and pulling it through, or however people do it. But those things are awesome.
I just talked to Britta Fordyce about those, and it's something that I never thought about is that they end up stinking if you don't clean them.
Well, I do, because they actually, like the hard water or whatever, you'll see like if you keep it on your tying desk, or if you keep it filled up with water, in 3 or 4 days, it starts looking like your fish tank, right? Like you can see it like evaporating, and like there's that gross crust. And
it's just animal parts in there,
I just wash mine.
You gotta wash your fly tying swim tank, everybody. That's gonna be my get rich quick scheme. I'm gonna come up with a cleaning solution.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just rebrand Dawn. Just put it in a different bottle. Put a sticker on it.
Yeah. Put a cool fly logo on it.
There are tons of people do that. There's so much.
$15 a bottle. Let's go.
Yeah. What is it? Like I'm pretty positive there's like anti-icing stuff that's just like a Teflon spray. You're like, well, first of all, what kind of dickhead would put Teflon like in the water to keep your guys from icing up? You know what I mean? But like I've seen it. I'm like, that's Teflon spray. Yeah. They just repackaged it.
So you mentioned tying a lot of flies on tubes. Is that something that just kind of organically happened from the waters you're fishing, or is it something that you prefer? Do you still tie on shanks too, or?
Actually, it was suggested to me because, well, for starters, because they're really cheap. You can weight them however you want to. With a shank, you are guaranteed to already have that weight there, basically, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot more versatile. And and really at the end of the day, it's also cheaper. Again, like a package of those over shanks, you're just going to save some money when they get lost a lot. And between that, I also think that they just cast better for people. All kinds of little strange things that go into it.
There's a bunch. You could argue a bunch of pros with that too. I mean, as far as fish, hooking the fish safely, all those kind of things. April Vokey was talking to me about stacking them. Having a couple tubes on at once and changing things up that way.
You can make like a 4-station intruder if you wanted to, just by plugging them into each other. At least with the pro sport fisher setup, like how they do theirs. It's really awesome.
I'm planning on doing a whole episode on tubes at some point. So I don't want to get too deep into that, but I do want to know, I saw it early on when I started getting into, really jumping into fly tying. And I ordered a tube fly and was kind of the same thing, like, what the hell? What do I do? All these kind of things. I'm learning the same way most of us probably do. Once I felt confident tying on shanks and stuff, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try some tubes. And I bought a tool for my vise to hold the tube. It wasn't working very well, and it kind of discouraged me a little bit. And so do you have any recommendations? What do you like to what setup do you like to use to tie your tube flies?
I mean, I have a Renzetti vise. I love them. It's kind of like what I've stuck with. And then I have the tube adapter. I can't remember who makes it. Probably Pro Sport Tube, Fisher, or whatever.
Is it the needle, like the needle that it holds?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's really just a matter of, I don't know what kind of vise you have or if that makes a difference, but my vise seems to hold it just fine. I don't put crazy pressure on it when I tie. And then getting them loose, I know you had Eric Leninger on, right?
Yeah.
And so if you ever watch him or talk to him about it, he'll say the nose grease. You know what I mean? Kind of rub your nose, rub it on your tube adapter, and it could be anything. It could be ball sweat. It could be anything you want. Something greasy.
Nose grease comes up. Nose grease comes up as a solution in fishing on a couple different topics. I've heard it for ferrules that are stuck, or your rod too.
Yeah, exactly. It does. Yeah, I mean, any oil, anything, any oil, part of your body. Yeah. You could rub your hair if you got an oily head. So, but
yet another product soon to be in my e-store. my own nose grease.
I was just thinking about just bottling.
Just bottling chochis. This will be my second round at a chochis product in my life. Only this time it's fly fishing related.
Yeah, that was part of it. I went to the fly shop and I was getting set up. Let's get a pack of tubes. Let's go. Let's try this out. And the guy at my local shop tried to tell me, no, get this needle too. I'm like, no, I got this tool. I got this tool, man. I told him, he's like, get the needle. I'm like, I got the tool, dude. It says right here. I don't need a needle, right? And anyway, I'm not going to discourage or disparage a product or whatever, but it didn't work. It didn't work the way I thought it would. And it might be maybe I didn't know how to use it right, but it sure seemed like I was getting a lot of action when I was tying on it, and it just wasn't working. It was all floppy and stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I know how to tie on shanks. I got a ton of shanks. I'm going to tie on these things.
I'm going to tell you, when it comes to that kind of thing, it's going to turn into one of those the Ford versus Chevy guys. It's just these fucking opinions, and it really just kind of boils down to what you like.
Yeah, I've enjoyed fishing them for sure. The ones I fish, it's been, like you said, easy casting, and there's some advantages there for sure. So I'm going to run down all the geographic stuff and more details about the Sandy in my monologue. But let's start with what makes the Sandy River special to you guys.
Well, proximity. No, I'll say. So before, one thing that I like, I'm trying to figure out where to begin here. It starts on Mount Hood on the Sandy Glacier, right? Cool. And it's kind of our volcano. It's our mountain, and it's where I learned to snowboard. And snowboarding was my first passion in my life. And so as I kind of just discovered Mount Hood and I got into backcountry snowboarding and more and more and more, that opened up even more of a world to me, that this is where our rivers come from. Kind of this crazy thing. Either I wasn't paying attention when I was a young kid in school or whatever, and I was discovering these things on my own through this. But when I made that connection to the Sandy Glacier and the Sandy River, and this is runoff from our mountain, and that thing occurred. it's a river that like changes actually like drastically really often. Sand gets moved around a lot. That's why it's called the Sandy River. And so like it'll just kind of like, it'll feel fresh often. Big rains will come and like what you previously fished will be eroded away. And like, you'll be like, oh, that's interesting. Or here's a new avenue to go. And so there's those elements to it that make it a really nice fishery.
Keeps testing you.
It can be like a really, really populated river.
Yeah, what makes it different than like the people who've gone up and fished the Clackamas or something? Like what would make them come up there and check that one out too? You know,
really, if you're fishing the Clackamas or the Sandy, most people who are fishing the Clackamas will also fish the Sandy because their proximity to each other is very close. Like they're both like right out of Portland.
Tributaries of the Columbia, right?
Yeah. Usually like if the Clackamas is like in kind of poor shape, the Sandy usually is in good shape. And you can kind of like pick and choose like, you know, which one to go to. So that's where we really make the swap. And that's how it works for me and really everybody else who kind of knows what they're getting into when they're fishing. The good anglers who are paying attention and are seasoned, they're like, oh, you know, like the Clackamas is running at 10,000 and we're just going to stay right away from that. And the Sandy's coming into shape right now. And so that's where that flip flop happens. But
does that have anything to do? You'd sent me a video about the Marmot Dam coming down, right? Which is about 10 years ago, from what I understand. I mean, how much impact has that had? What are the positive results you've seen on the Sandy? Did that affect the rivers near it too? I mean, what have you seen?
Well, it started actually like it opened up the habitat above the dam. So fish started coming in and that population started like kind of coming back. It just created a better, healthier fishery. And any undammed river is actually something like that feels really special because just so many of them are. I mean, we have so many rivers that have dams on them and then they adjust flows and it'll be warm. Like it's super strange because that's how the Mackenzie is used actually. Like the Army Corps of Engineers will open up those dams to cool off the Willamette River down in Portland, like over 100 miles away when water temps are getting kind of out of like how they use these rivers for what purposes and how it affects things. And I don't know, but I'm always of the mind that like we tried to like we think we're doing some good by doing this, and really we should just be leaving everything the fuck alone. I don't know, and there'll probably be some pushback on that. There's tons of things for me to learn in those regards, you know, but where they are beneficial sometimes or not. But I love the idea that I'm fishing on a river that doesn't have one, and it seems like it's doing just fine. And that's probably exactly why, like when the Clackamas sucks, the Sandy's fine because the Sandy is doing its own thing.
Yeah. As a steelheader, it is kind of like this weird double-edged sword or line that you walk, right? For sure. Like my friends at the Cal Bass Union have a good sticker that's like "Save Steelhead, Fish for Bass." You know, like and it's true. I love them so much. I'm reading about them constantly. I want to fish for them all the time. At the same time, you gotta contribute to the conservation there. If you enjoy that kind of thing, because it's totally in danger, right? And it does feel like a little weird when you like have a good day or something doing it. You're like, you know, should I be doing this?
Well,
you know,
I mean, it's really difficult for anybody who wants to target those fish is going to find some excuse on why they're doing it in a way that's thoughtful and safe for the fish. And like really, again, like we really just left them alone. That would be the best way to go about it. There is something said with the people who are involved in whatever kind of activity that you do, like people who mountain bike or snowboard or fish or hunt, like those are the people who have a tendency, I believe, to like see the problems because they're immersed in that thing.
Yeah,
like they're the ones that are seeing like you know the glaciers are receding. We're here every year after year after year, and there's something occurring, and so. Yeah, I mean, like, and they're the ones who are going to be at the front of conservation.
I'm noticing that trend with more people I meet through this show, the extreme sport connection there. Like you're not the first person I met on this show that has been big into snowboarding before or along with fly fishing. Met a guide recently that was a pro BMX rider before that. I got Chuck Reagan was big into skateboarding, you know, all this kind of stuff. It does have that. It all kind of has this weird connection there when you're.
Did you have Chuck on?
I did, yeah, last season.
Yeah. I actually loved hot water music when I was like a teenager, 14, 15, 16 years old. Mm-hmm. But I didn't like know who that band was. And when I made that connection, I was like, Chuck Reagan, hot water music, like through his Instagram. And I was like, he fly fishing, and then I'm like a 35-year-old man or something at that point, and I still got really excited. I was like, oh, that's really neat.
You don't see those worlds collide a whole lot, strangely enough. I'm sure there's plenty of musicians and stuff that fish, but like on that kind of level, like I don't know, like you know what Chuck's been doing, you know, professional level on both sides of that coin or whatever.
Exactly. I mean, that's what makes it really neat. Actually, I think special for me to know that exists out there. Like, well, that's
it was a fun
rockstar life and guiding, and
he was he never stops moving it. When I had him on the show, check out the episode if you haven't. I think it's episode 5, I want to say. He was on his cell, like working. You know, he never stops doing it. But it was a fun interview.
No kidding.
So we talked about conserving, you know, steelhead conservation stuff. Let's talk a little bit about fishing for them there and what the timing of the steelhead runs and the salmon runs are there on the Sandy.
Well, I'm going to try to think about this without butchering it completely, but basically you have a winter steelhead season that is effectively good from December through March, and then the overlapping salmon. And this is why I don't want to sound like a dingus, but I don't really fish for salmon, so I guess it doesn't much matter. At least
gonna ask you.
But I know that I believe it's Chinook and coho, and I think the Chinook come in kind of overlapping that March, April, May months, and then coho have a good chunk. The coho are coming through for like at least 4 months, and they come in later in the season. There's something about how this works. So the Sandy River is a good fishery for like fun fish year round. However, that's the thing with the Clackamas and Sandy Rivers is their proximity to Portland mean that people go to them for like summer recreation. And you get like the inner tubers and it just turns into like a mess. It's
yelling
just,
kids.
It's just like
same with my river. It's the same on my river. I mean, the Lower American River is real close to Sac State, and it just ends up. You know, we have a good shad run in the summer, and you're dodging rafters and stuff the whole time until they get off the water and the bite turns on. You know, when it gets dark anyway, so it's like, you know, you just deal with it until then.
That's basically. I mean, I'm like, if you're gonna go fish the Clackamas or Sandy, you're dealing with people who aren't going to show up till it's, you know, warm enough in the day, but usually by 9 a.m. like people are beginning to show up. By 10 it's really kind of on, and it's just always, so you could get there like early morning and you could avoid that if you wanted to, and I'm sure there are fishermen who do. I just have a tendency I'm just like, I am just avoiding that.
So there's a winter run there, but is there a summer run too? I mean, you said it's kind of year round, but like
there is.
That's cool. I really want to get it. I haven't caught a salmon on purpose, on purpose. I mean, I caught it as bycatch during a steelhead trip, but it wasn't during salmon season, so you couldn't take it out of the water. I got clip it off at the boat. And I want to catch one really bad because I want to eat it. I haven't had a chance. And the American River, where I live here, the run's getting kind of worse and worse. So my chance of doing it locally are getting worse. But I want to do that one of these days.
Well, the Klamath River is about to have all those dams taken out.
For sure. Yeah.
And at least that's kind of close. You live in Sacramento?
I do. Yeah. Well, close to it. Carmichael. Yeah.
Oh, well, I have no idea where that is.
It's Sacramento.
It's close enough. Okay. Well, I know where Sacramento is, so that's what I'll go with. But so, I mean, the Sacramento to the Klamath is only like 3 hours away then or something, right?
5 or 6.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wait, we're only like 8 hours away from Sacramento here.
Yeah, but aren't you? How far is it to the Klamath for you?
I actually don't know. I don't go to the Klamath.
I think it's probably like 3 hours, and then we even it out.
It had to be like, down I-5.
I feel like it's always taken me like 10 hours to drive to Portland whenever I have.
That's what I was saying the other day. We had a friend that was down in Sacramento, and I was like, that's a 10-hour drive, because I visited Sacramento in May last year.
Oh yeah.
And
what were you doing out here?
They were like, no, it's 7 or 8 hours. But in my mind, it's 10. I don't know. In my memory.
We drive like responsible people then.
Yeah, apparently.
Well,
so what's access on the Sandy like? Is it good for wading in? Like if you don't have a boat, there's plenty of stuff you can get.
Yeah, it really is. We have the parks offer access. There's off-road access all the way down to the mouth of the river, and if you're a gear guy, it seems like there's a lot of that kind of good water for them, and so you'll catch it. We were just there on Sunday, and Sunday was a mess of people. Like, it was crazy. Yeah. So we launched at Oxbow Park. Oxbow, you launch at the boat launches at the far end of the park. Like, you drive through the entire park launch. So then when you float it, you're floating through the park for like the first 3 miles. There were people everywhere between the boats that were launched and people who had just parked their cars. On the way in, I knew it. I was like, there's way more cars than normal. These people have to be fishing because no one's just out here for a hike. And so
it was cold and really rainy.
And it was. I was like, it was so wild. I've actually never. That was my first time actually ever seeing it that busy. I was just like, yeah, there's something there. But
the Sandy is actually my favorite river to wade, because it feels, for like somebody who hasn't been fly fishing for that long, it feels really safe.
Not extreme wading or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of really nice spots to like get comfortable and move down your run super safely.
That's important. That's important.
Yeah, and well, like when you're managing line and you're like learning, it just is easy to be comfortable.
Yeah, there. I mean, we've all been in the scenario where like maybe you had a couple too many beers or something like that, and you're like you're in the middle and you're fishing, and then you have to like turn back and walk back to shore, and you're like making that like that half turn you got to make to go back, and then you're like shit, cinch up your belt, real quick.
So scary.
Yeah.
Oh man,
that's important for sure, especially if you're getting somebody to try it for the first time or something like that. Something that isn't gonna make them worry about getting sucked down river.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For all the
Deschutes would be like the worst place. The Deschutes is really difficult to fish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for good wading, it really is. That's a trickier. I don't want to make it sound like it's like not, but
for access points, or just you're talking just like wading.
No. For physically wading. Yeah. I'm like, there's good spots, but there's a lot of good spots that would make for like really good runs to fish that are really difficult to wade. And so
that's the Pit River. The Pit River here, it's notorious, and you hear it and you're like, oh yeah, extreme wading, whatever. And like you get out there and you're like, oh, you're like, shit, yeah, this isn't easy.
It really is.
Huge boulders and whatever. Yeah.
That's what it feels like. Yeah, you're stepping over these huge rocks, and you're like, well, if I step in between like the wrong huge rock, like I'm actually just underwater.
Yeah.
So
hey, what I meant to ask you guys too, what the like general rod setup, what kind of like what weight rod are you fishing on the Sandy? Let's talk two-handed rods. What are you fishing in, like what kind of tips do you bring with you, all those kind of things?
I mean, typically it's just a 7-weight rod. I've been trying to just stock up with nothing but Berkheimer, so I started out with 2.
Cool.
We've got more. I'm going to be a Berkheimer ambassador here, hopefully in the next week. So I'm kind of just waiting for like Carrie to give me like the stamp and some rods.
Right on.
But yeah, and then maybe I'll have like a Spectrum. But I really like I think the 7-weight rods for like the sink tips, for me anyways, I feel like they cast the best. And so And if I feel like they cast the best, I'm hoping that that's how other people feel. And it seems like that actually is the case, because I also will put like I can't even remember the models. I have a Sage and I have a Reddington and I have a few other spay rods that go out there, and people don't tend to like them as much.
Are you fishing more Skagit heads or Scandi? What are you doing?
I was just going to say that is with Skagit heads, like, which is to turn over like those larger flies. They do cast better with Scandi heads. Some of them, like the 6-weight spays, for sure. They really just don't want to turn over like any kind of sink tip or heavier line. Well, especially for people who are new to it. Like once you kind of know how to work one of those things well, you can cast them, you can make it work. But that's a whole nother dynamic, right? Well, earlier on in this, we were talking about like the single hand to spay thing, and like learning that new thing, and just being frustrating. That's basically what single hand to double hand to Skagit to Scandi is. If you've gotten like Skagit down, and then you go to Scandi, you got to like learn how to cast again.
Yep.
And you're just like, oh man, like something I was good at. I can either just go out and fish, or now I have to try and fumble and do this thing. And
I feel like the Skagit head is a little more forgiving. Like if you fuck up, it still gets out there.
They are. There's like, wish I could remember the fellow's name. I'm not trying to name drop. These are like YouTube people that I know, right?
Sure.
Just YouTube shit.
Yeah.
There's this like, I think his name is John. He's a British guy. And he has this really great video on casting for beginners.
Is it the airflow guy?
I think that's him. Yeah.
I want to say, watch him. I can't remember his name.
But he's like, get your beginners on a Scandi line because Skagits are deceiving. He's like, people think that they've got it down, but a Scandi doesn't lie.
Good way
right?
to put it.
Like
Yeah.
you're going to cast it well, or you're not going to cast it.
Yeah.
And so
I felt that firsthand for sure when I got my first Scandi set up. Went out and was like, oh, all right. I guess I'm going to overhead cast this today so I can get it out there a little bit, and then I'll go back and watch some new videos,
Oh, man.
Well, I want to first ask you if you ordered DoorDash yet. And I was going to remind you that if you
It's on the way. We did it. It's done.
You got Cafe Yum coming?
Oh, did you do that?
8 minutes.
Oh, man, she did that all in a sneaky way.
Hell yeah. Right on. Okay. Just want to make sure you guys,
very.
I want to make sure you guys ate tonight. We're doing this right over supper.
Yeah, I mean, we basically both just got off work and then put the dogs in the crate.
Me too. I'm having a Paloma, and then I'm gonna go have chicken and vegetables here when I get off the phone with you guys. But
lovely.
I don't want to get off the phone yet. I want to ask you guys a question I ask everybody. I want to ask you about if you've had any paranormal or supernatural experiences. Now, Mount Hood is kind of like a hot spot if you're into the topic. And I'm not sure if that's going to tie in here, but I'd love to hear. Yeah.
I don't have anything on Mount Hood. Like that.
Include some stuff in my episode on Mount Hood. I've been reading about it.
Are you? I can't wait to hear about it. I know that there probably is, because like there's a lot of, well, it was a sacred place, so that has to exist for starters, right? Like at some degree.
Sacred place, as in like native tribes and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually called Y East, if you want to be proper.
Right.
But yeah, no, on Mount Hood, no. I did say, like, there was a time in my life, if I had anything that felt like kind of strange, it was actually, so what is it called when you have like sleep paralysis or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what that is?
Sleep paralysis? No, that's just what they call it. Yeah.
Whatever it is, like where you're just like terrified beyond belief. And basically like you're kind of like out of body looking at yourself trying to scream, and you can see everything occurring.
Yes.
So yeah.
You've had this before, yeah?
Yeah. So I've had this happen to me before.
More than once.
It was me in my bed, and like I was surrounded by, I couldn't see faces, but the figures. And
this is a regular part of this.
I really feel myself trying to scream. I was trying to move my body. I like everything about it, and like watching it occur and being like, you got to move, you got to do something. And then you kind of like wake up to it not existing. but it's the most frightening fucking thing on the planet. And I'm like, what is that?
I was just talking to somebody about this topic, and apparently that the figures being there is a part of the phenomenon. Like that's not like something that's like unique to your experience or something, right? Like this is something that others have all said about sleep paralysis before. When did it happen? Like, do you remember? Like,
yeah, I was 14 or something. I had just moved back to Oregon, because I remember I was like sleeping on a couch when this actually occurred. Yeah, 14 years old, but it's been with me like for fucking ever. I constantly, sometimes when I'm laying on a couch, I literally am like, want to be careful if it feels too familiar, because I don't ever want to like have that.
So it's only happened once.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I have watched like they're like Netflix shits on it or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And I can't even watch those things. I'm like, oh my God, like it's crazy spooky. I don't like
it. Impactful on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was talking to somebody else who had experienced that and had it for a short period of time, like where it was a really stressful point in their life. Like I think they were between jobs or they just started some new job. I can't remember. Maybe they were doing school and a job or something like that, and they couldn't handle the stress. Somehow manifested itself in the sleep paralysis they had. I want to say 5, 6, 7 times or something like that.
Oof.
But yeah, they described it the same way, and I can't imagine. I mean, I put my daughter to bed and I read to her, and by the time I put her to bed, I'm pretty tired. I get up early. I often will I'll fall asleep like while I'm reading to her, and I'll start just saying stuff that like isn't in the book, like I'll say no. She'll wake me up cracking up, like she'll be dying laughing at like whatever I'm saying. But there has been a time once where I woke up and I've never had sleep paralysis or anything, but I can only imagine how scary it is, because I woke up and I was just in that little in between where I didn't really know where I was. I was actually in her bed, and I couldn't tell where I was. Like I opened my eyes. I wear glasses too, obviously, and I didn't have them on, and I couldn't really see very well. And it was already scary, just having that kind of unknown feeling when you're in that vulnerable state. So, especially with faceless figures surrounding you, or however you described it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you can't get that angle because you can't move your body. Like there's all kinds of things that are frightening about it, because like everything you're trying to figure out is impossible. Yeah.
I was every time I talk to folks that are in the Pacific Northwest, I'm hoping for Bigfoot stories.
That's what I wanted to be able to tell you.
Yeah.
I don't have one. No Bigfoot yet.
It's such a contentious subject. It's like a super, out of all the things, UFOs, ghosts, or whatever, it's like you're usually hard edged. No Bigfoot or yes Bigfoot.
It's super funny because if I'm gonna assign any kind of meaning to something that seems absurd, it's gonna be Bigfoot. Or, I'm like, yeah, of course. Let me go with that one. Okay.
Well, it's been pretty easy. We've had TV sitcoms about it. Harry and the Hendersons. All that kind of stuff.
Actual people that will actively hunt Bigfoot.
No, I talked to a buddy of mine the other day on another episode of this show that's going to come out, JD Ritchie, about the idea of setting up a Bigfoot tour guide business, because you don't have anything to produce. You just take them out to check out the woods and see everything cool out there. You don't have any fish to catch or anything like that, right?
Not like I want to bash it, because you're about it, but those ghost hunting shows where they always have their fucking gadgets out and the beep beep beep, and did you hear that? And then they all go running, and you could watch 188 episodes of those things, and they never,
dude. Yeah. And listen, I am into the subject. I mean, all those subjects, but it's the ridiculousness of it is part of what's fun to me. The lizard people and everything about it. The crazier it is, hell yeah, let's go. Let me read about this.
I have a spirit story that is not terrifying or anything, but I dated somebody for a lot of years, and when we broke up, we stayed very good friends, but he had a bad drug problem. We were best friends for a few years, and then it was Christmas Eve. I was with a new boyfriend's family for the first time, celebrating Christmas, and I got very sick very fast, like suddenly, having a blast, enjoying dinner, laughing, playing board games, and then suddenly I was just like something hit me like a ton of bricks, and I started sweating, and I was like, I have to go home, like now. And it felt like something hit me. I was really weak, and I was just like, I gotta go. Like, I felt like I was getting a flu, really weak, trembly. And then 2 days later, I got a phone call from that ex-boyfriend's father telling me that he passed away, drug overdose on Christmas Eve.
Oh, no way.
I know it was him. I know I like felt it.
Man, that's a crazy one. I'm really really interested in this, that whatever, borderline life after death stories, all those kind of things. That's an interesting one. I always tell my brothers that I'm going to haunt them. Like, I can't wait to fucking haunt you. I can't wait to haunt you. You know, like I tell them.
I hope you do.
You know, but that is a hardcore, like, say it is, and I like to say I like to believe all this stuff. I like to believe it all until it's totally unproven. You know, like that's a hardcore sympathy pain that he gave you. That is a brutal way to go out.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Like,
know.
Come on,
like,
man, you could have done something sweet. You know,
that's so.
Yeah.
I was like, that is so you. Like, of course you would. I was like kind of mad.
That's crazy.
Like, on Christmas.
Or a warning, right? Like a physical warning, like, hey, don't.
Yeah, I think he was
don't
trying
go down
to
this road or whatever, right? Yeah.
And
That's
we were,
crazy.
and like, I was actually only like a mile away from his house. You're hearing our pit bull.
Yeah. What's your pit bull's name?
Nash.
Nash.
Yeah, he actually didn't get dinner either yet. So he's like, what the
talking to you? Yeah.
heck is going on?
I had a pit bull as a kid. They're sweet dogs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. He's a good one.
I have a lab, Cookie Monster. She'd come in here. She'd come in here and do the same thing.
No kidding. I was really hoping that when we started this, like, you'd be in your car. Yeah,
dude, I've only had to do one interview from my car. I did it. The first interview for the first episode of the second season. I talked to the guys from the Hermit Company in Finland.
Yep.
And the time difference was 10 hours or something like that. And so I had to talk to him at like 9:30 at night, and with kids sleeping and stuff, I had to do it in my car. But thankfully, you know, they have to live by my rules right now. And they don't they can't open the locked door and come in here and barge into my interview or whatever.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Speaking of, I want to congratulate you. I know you have a little one on the way, and it's that is a big a huge thing. Congratulations. Life changing for sure, and soon you'll be spending your free time using your fly tying skills to sew like merit stars on your kids' karate gis, like I was doing today on my work break. You know,
true, actually. So
yeah,
I'm just about to start league hockey again, and I'm like, well, you know, now she's saying like, hey, well, he's got to do jujitsu, and I'm like, well, hockey, fishing, and then I'm just like, well, he'll figure out whatever he wants to do. Yeah. We're just going to kind of give him a nudge, I guess.
Nash is into it. He has something to say. Yeah.
It's really late for his dinner, actually.
Yeah.
We've been watching like all these little tiny kid hockey videos, which are the best because their helmets are so huge and they're on their tiny bodies. It's
he's doing the same thing that I'm doing. So let's wrap it up. You know, I'm gonna go eat dinner. You got to get Nash fed. You guys have Cafe Yum showing up here in a moment. I want to say thank you for wasting some time with me and making this happen. Can't wait to come up and meet you guys and fish with you.
Yeah, sure, dang. Yeah, we're excited about that. Yeah, we got to get linked up with Jim. I've only met Jim once. Like, he pulled in, he saw my trailer, and
Jim Sens.
Yeah, Jim Sens.
Yeah.
But I've really always wanted to fish with him and crew and kind of like get something together. So
I promised Jim that if next time I made it up to Portland that I'd come hang out. So for sure. Yeah, man. Yep. Yeah. Well, I can't.
All right.
Wait.
Well, sounds awesome. We'll touch base, and you have a good evening. Thank you for having us on your
Thank you
on your
so
podcast
much.
here.
Roxy, thank you. Charlie,
fun.
thank you. Nash, thank you. Thanks, Roxy and Charlie. That was fun. You guys are cool, you know? We didn't even talk about Danzig, and I know that at least Roxy and I are big fans.
Welcome to my book collection. This is just part of my book collection. I've got all kinds of stuff here. The Werewolf by Montague Summers. This is great. There's lots of great werewolf stories in here, all documented, all true.
It gives me a good reason to go visit them, or have them back on the show, or just trade memes on Instagram. You should give them a follow. They've been posting some cool flies, and they fish in beautiful places. They're showing that love prevails out there on the open water.
Wow. True. Wow.
And congrats to them again, as they're expecting their first child together. Prepare to never sleep again. Ha ha ha. You really don't, though. Speaking of kids, I never knew my whole family could survive this long on $90. Lance, Todd, Gabe, Aaron, Kyle, thanks a ton for your generous donations, bros. You are the only 5 people that care that my family has food on the table. I mean, we'd been surviving on power bait for a while there, as the risk outweighed the reward of using it to try and catch fish when you can just eat the glittery colored and deliciously smelling dough.
Take this away from me. I can't even take another bite. I can't fucking control my head from doing this.
I was just eating till I'm dead.
Send in your donations today, folks. I promise to use the money towards laughs I can share with you over the digital airwaves. I promise that I'm very appreciative. My Spotify playlists are on the digital airwaves too, by the way. If you didn't notice, I release a Spotify playlist full of music inspired by or falling in line with each episode's theme. They tend to be around an hour long and include tunes that I enjoy, so I hope you like them too. I always take the time to thank you for listening to my show, and today is no different. Thank you. Thank you. But it's about time for me to thank my friends and family that have contributed to this show too. 2 of my brothers, Jerry and Orville, help me with art and music for the show. My sweet little daughter has recorded segments for me. My friend the Worm ends up as my scientific professional amongst other roles in production/writing assistance. And now my buddy Christian is animating short clips from the show too. I'm lucky to have so many talented people in my family and as my friends. At 42, I didn't think I would still be surrounded by so many equally stupid and creative people. I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful for my wife putting up with all the time I spend in my car making this dumb show too.
Before I say it, I want to tell you I really hate you for this. I don't want to do it. I'm unhappy. My stomach is boiling. My palms are sweating. And if you think you're getting a jump after this, you're sadly mistaken. Of course, if you had a brain in that huge head, you'd already know how I feel, but you want to hear it? Fine. This is what you want. It's your stinking lousy Valentine's Day present. So here it is. I love you.
The fly fishing community should be grateful to have these orgs doing what they do for us. Project Healing Waters brings a high-quality, full-spectrum fly fishing program to an ever-expanding number of veterans in need at over 200 locations nationwide. Project Healing Waters programs meet regularly throughout the year, with volunteers teaching the basics and advanced techniques while building long-term relationships. It's much more than a one-time fly fishing trip. The program provides basic fly fishing, fly casting, fly tying, and rod building classes for participants whose skills range from beginners who have never fished before to those with prior fly fishing and tying experience. All fly fishing and tying equipment is provided to the participants at no cost. Fishing trips, both one-day and multi-day, are also provided free of charge to participants. Visit projecthealingwaters.org to learn more. Fishing the Good Fight is breaking down walls, smashing taboos, and building community. They believe that experiences in nature are an important part of caring for one's mental health. Less than 20% of men struggling with mental illness and/or substance abuse are receiving professional support. The combination of a healthy therapeutic outlet, talk therapy, and a strong community will lead to mental well-being. Men face specific challenges when it comes to addressing mental health issues. According to Mental Health America, 6 million men living in the U.S. suffer from depression. In a National Center for Health Statistics studies, nearly 1 in 10 men reported experiencing some form of depression, but less than half sought treatment. 70% of all people who die by suicide are men. That's from the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Men are often reluctant to seek help, particularly for depression, and are far less likely to access professional mental health services than women. Men make up less than 25% of people treated for depression and or substance abuse. For a lot of men, Fishing the Good Fight program, such as a retreat, is the first time they have opened up about the struggles they faced, and 100% of men who attended a recent retreat indicated that they would seek professional help after the treatment. If you've ever wondered about your own mental health and wanted to improve your quality of life, Fishing the Good Fight can provide the tools, resources, and support to guide you along your wellness journey. FishingTheGoodFight.org has more information.
This episode of the Secret Society of Fly Tires is brought to you by eggs. Ah, eggs. Ah, the leech. Eggs are a kind of food that falls out of birds and lizards and even fish. Did you know that? You probably did, but I bet you didn't know you could eat eggs. That's right, idiot. You can go to the store and buy an egg right now and eat it. You should do that because eggs are paying for this episode of this podcast, and that's part of the deal. I have to tell you about eggs and their availability and their edibility, so please go buy an egg and eat it. Thank you. This episode of the Secret Society of Fly Tires is brought to you by The Musician's Guide for Aspiring Musicians, a new book written by musicians for people who are thinking about becoming a musician. The publisher might get mad at me for doing this, but I'll sum up the entire book for you right now during this advertisement. Here's the gist. Don't become a musician. Don't learn to play an instrument. Don't sing. Don't perform music alone or in front of others. Don't do it. It's a waste of time and money, and it's only for dopes. Please, God, don't become a musician.
Please note that this is not a real advertisement, and the company, brand, entity, or product mentioned in the preceding ad in no way endorses, agrees with, or knows about this podcast.